Hey guys, what's up? Those of you who follow my channel for a while will know that I am a huge fan of the Spirit of the Church Covenant. And I talk quite a bit about things that I think work well, strategies and whatnot, but I've never really taken everything that I've learned and tried to collate it into a single video. So that's what I'd like to do today. I kind of wanted to give 10 tips, both for the Spear of the Church invaders, but then tips for hosts who are trying to combat the spears of the church. So I'm going to start with the hosts, and I'm going to go in order of increasing importance. So we'll start with the least important tips to begin with. And I think I'll probably reproduce all of these in the comments too. So if you're not really interested in watching the entire video, but you would like to know what I think, just check the comments. So first up is number 10. And again, these are for the hosts. Don't hang back as the host. I see hosts making this mistake. They try to hang back and they let all their phantoms do the work for them. But for reasons we'll talk about in a few minutes, it's really important that you try to pile on the spear of the church. The numbers are your advantage. Make sure you're piling on the spears of the church together as a group. Don't hang back and wait. If you're a caster, obviously, you may want to hang back a little bit, but in that case, you're not really hanging back from the fight. You're just positioning yourself strategically for maximum damage. Number 9, choose the number of phantoms that you bring to this fight very carefully. Each phantom that you add to the fight is going to result in more defense, more poise, and more stamina for the invader. And believe me, once the number gets up to 3 or 4, they become well nigh unstoppable. Now, with that many phantoms, you can really pile on the spear, and it sort of balances out. But just like any other boss, the boss gets more powerful even as those phantoms start dying off. And God help you if you brought 3 phantoms to the fight and the spear kills all 3. That fight becomes essentially unwinnable for you as the host. And then number 8, it's not an honor duel. Make sure you don't treat it like one. I see hosts making this mistake sometimes. The Spear of the Church has advantages that you don't. They have guardians there to help gank you. The guardians can heal them. The spear has the golden orbs. There's just a lot of advantages that the spear has that you as a host don't. So make sure you heal. That's part of the balancing mechanism. That's part of the way that this is a fair fight. Number 7, be very careful when choosing to block. Using a shield, a lot of hosts learn to play the game this way. They block attacks and they try to counterattack. This works pretty well in PvE. It doesn't work very well in PvP, and it works even more poorly against the Spear of the Church. In large part due to the fact that the orbs that shoot out from the Spear of the Church do a considerable amount of stamina damage to shields. And if you're not paying very careful attention to your stamina, it's very easy to get your guard broken. And in fact, when I play as a spear, my eyes typically get really wide when I see somebody that's shielding a lot, because I know it's almost guaranteed that I'm going to break their guard. Number 6, Perserverance. This has to do with when you have more than just the host in the world. As you add phantoms, the invader gains more poise, but the poise isn't of the type that they normally get in PvP, which doesn't start until they begin attacking. This is like Dark Souls 1 poise, where you can't interrupt them. They can start attacks even after you hit them. Be extremely cautious about this. Especially if you're using a really slow weapon, you got to be careful that you avoid a lot of trades. Number 5, Tears of Denial. One of the most effective strategies I've seen as a Spear of the Church is when the host and his phantoms use Tears of Denial. They can attack with impunity, and even if I'm fortunate enough to get off a one-hit parry and riposte, it still won't kill them. Then the other phantoms can all gather around and attack me and prevent me from chasing down that phantom. That phantom can then go heal, recast tears, and what have you. So that's a very, very effective strategy to keep in mind. Number 4, multiple casters. So if you are a host and you're going to take on the Spear of the Church and you have a choice over the types of phantoms you bring to the fight, bringing multiple casters can be a very effective strategy. One caster is effective, but two casters is really way more effective because they can position themselves in such a way that the spear can't really hide from them behind the pillars in the arena, which they can do with just one caster. Number 3 is, if you do choose to attack this boss as a solo host, and I think you should at least try it, slow and steady wins the race. As a spear, I have lost this fight numerous times to players who really weren't that good, but they were smart about it. They would hit me once or twice. I may do a lot of damage to them. They would back off and they would heal and continue. So if you think about it, as the spear, I typically have roughly 1400 points of HP. So if you take off 100 points of HP with each R1, which is a pretty low estimate, that's only 14 R1s that you have to get against me in the entire fight to kill me. You have roughly 15 Estus, so even if you heal after every single R1, you will still come out of this fight ahead. So don't overplay your hand, play conservatively, and you should have a lot of luck in this fight. Number 2, if you choose to bring a large team with you, make sure that you assault as a group. I cannot emphasize this enough. The groups that are successful are those that come at me in force. They bring 2, 3, 4 people all attacking me simultaneously. And you cannot fight that many people at once. The only way for a spear to be successful against so many phantoms in a host is to fight you one at a time, to try and peel off one person at a time and deal with them one at a time. Don't let them do that. Attack as a group and you will definitely be successful. I've had fights against 3 and 4 players that lasted 40 seconds because they all launched a coordinated effort and just chased me down and ran me down like a gang squad. That's really the effective approach that you want to use. Finally, number 1, don't bring patches. Patches is useless. Patches does not apply pressure to the spear, and what patches does do is he increases the poise, stamina, and defense of the spear. And if you're a single host and you bring patches, congratulations, now you've just given that spear some of that Dark Souls 1 poise. Not as much as if you had 3 or 4, but enough. The bottom line here is that patches is not going to contribute enough to the fight to justify the increases that you're going to hand to the invader. It's not like a normal boss where he can serve as a distraction. The spear is smart enough to realize just leave patches alone. I learned early on that fighting against patches is just a complete waste of time because he's such a tank and he doesn't really pose any real threat to you. Now, one way you might be able to use him is by kind of trying to hover around him if you're really patient and force the spear to come to you. Although I haven't seen any hosts try that, but I guess that's potentially an option that you could explore. Okay, that's it for the hosts. So now turning our attention to the Spears of the Church. Here's my tips for the Spears of the Church. Number 10 is be ready. This is a covenant that you don't invade on at will. Rather, you equip the covenant and you get summoned when the game is ready. So when that happens, you need to be ready. That means you're typically doing some sort of PvE. Maybe you're in between invasions. Being ready means thinking about the build that you want to have going in as a spear. Now, you may be fortunate enough in that build may match the current build you're using, but oftentimes you'll want to make a few changes. For instance, I always want to make sure I've got the Sun Princess ring on, because even though the regeneration isn't that much in absolute HP terms, because of your high defenses, the effective HP that you get from that is double, triple, or even quadruple what it might normally be. Regen is really, really important. Rings are just one example. Do you have miracles? Do you have spells? Do you have a particular weapon that you want to equip? A particular chime? Making sure that you have that all ready to go so that as soon as you get the notification that you're being summoned as a spear, you can make that switch. So be ready. Number 9, don't get frustrated. This is if you face a good team or even a moderately skilled host, they will win. I mean, that's kind of how this Covenant's designed. It's designed to be a challenge to hosts and their phantoms, but ultimately to be a surpassable one. It's a boss in a game that's designed to be hard, but designed to be solvable. So at the end of the day, if they do the right things, they will beat you. Don't take it personally. Tip your hat to the other guy. Now, if you made a mistake, learn from it and fix it. But if the host and their phantoms are doing the right things, they will beat you, and there's really nothing that you can do about it. Number 8, use the golden orbs. The golden orbs, there may be an actual name for this, and I'm not sure what it is. These are the orbs that orbit above your head and randomly sort of go out and attack the host and their phantoms. These are insanely useful for a few different reasons. One, if all of them hit somebody, it can do almost 200 HP in damage, which is really substantial. I also am a big fan of using it when you're chasing people down. You're chasing them down. If they're panic rolling, it's easy to roll catch them. If they're not panic rolling and trying to roll in reaction, those orbs can grab them. And if you're really lucky, the orbs will grab them right before you do your running attack, and then they can avoid it and get out of the way. It's also really good because it can do a ton of stamina damage to their shield. So if they're shielding, you swing at a shield and you see the orbs fire and hit their shield, swing again, because you will almost always break their guard with 2 hits of a weapon and the orbs. Now obviously it's going to depend on the weapon type, but I guess with some of the bigger like curved greatswords and greatswords that I use, that's usually the case. Tip number 7, go get the casters first. Casters present, just like in ganks, a big problem in that they can do a lot of damage to you from far away, so off the screen and you can't see them. Now if you have the volume turned up, you can hear the spells being cast, and that'll usually give you enough of a cue that you can react and roll out of the way, but not all the time. And a coordinated group of casters will just melt you. So if you can, try to target the casters first. The other reason to target casters first is because they usually have to shift a lot of their Estus into Ashen Estus in order to be effective. And as phantoms, they may only have a couple of Estus to heal from. So keeping pressure on them, they also tend to have lower HP. You can get rid of them more quickly. That's really a huge key to success in these fights. Trade, which is number 6. So trade means you have a large group, you have poise, you have high defense, use it. Don't be afraid to trade with people. If you have a group attacking you and you can get a couple R1s off, especially with a powerful weapon like my curved greatsword, take advantage of that. Make sure that you do that, because you will almost always win those trades. And this point actually dovetails nicely with my next point, which is number 5. Attack the field, then focus on individuals. What I mean by this is you're going to have a host and a number of phantoms coming after you, and you're going to kind of attack them indiscriminately, trying to attack whatever targets of opportunity you have. Usually what will happen is you'll swing a few times, and one or more of the host and phantoms will be low on health. That's the time where you want to focus on one of them and try to chase them down, just like you see me doing right here. I'm trying to chase this phantom down and finish him out. Now he happened to get a really well-timed parry. I've watched it a few times. I think it was a lot of luck just because of how I was mixing up the timings, but still credit to him for pulling that out. But I still killed him. The riposte really didn't do that much damage to me, and I've got one fewer phantom now to track down on the field. So again, attack the group, but then once you have somebody low on health, try to finish them off. This is especially true if it's a phantom. You got to be careful doing this with hosts. They have a huge reservoir of Estus, and if they get away and heal, you're going to want to break off, because you're going to have everyone else trying to chase you down and attacking you while you put pressure on a single person. When you put pressure on a single person, you're kind of giving away your intentions, and it makes your actions much more predictable to everybody else. So you can't really stay on somebody too long, but whenever you have an opportunity to finish out a Phantom like that, you should always try to take advantage of it. Number 4, the Divine Spear. This is the Covenant item that you get. I think you pick it up, you actually might pick it up just outside of the boss room, but it's the item that I've got equipped right now. Mine's a Divine Spear, which is one that's been upgraded after I think you get 30 of the Covenant items. But even the one that you get that isn't upgraded, it's really valuable. And I made a big mistake early on. I didn't use this item. I thought it was pretty worthless until some Reddit conversations encouraged me to go back and give it a second try. I did, and now I use it all the time. It's great at protecting the Guardians. It's great at separating groups of hosts and Phantoms. It's great at giving yourself some space for a heal or whatever else it is that you need to do. So be sure that you're using that. And I don't even think it uses FP. So it's really, really great. Number 3, Phantoms first. I kind of alluded to this already. Make sure that when you're trying to thin the field, you're going after the Phantoms first. Hosts just have too much Estus, and if you try to chase them down and kill them first without killing the Phantoms will just continually chip away at you. Phantoms have a lot less Estus, as I mentioned before, casters even less, so go after them first. Force them to go through their Estus, and then you can pick them off. So Phantoms first is really the way to go. Tip number 2, the type of build, faith build. I highly recommend that you go with some type of faith build. It doesn't have to be faith focused. It can be some kind of hybrid build, but you're definitely going to want the ability to heal. What I recommend is try using just maybe 15 faith or like 18 faith. 18's a good spot because then you can use the Filianor Chime. And the really nice thing about the Filianor Chime is the weapon art is a regeneration miracle, but the advantage of the Filianor Chime, unlike other chimes that offer a similar weapon art, is that it continues to work even when you're not holding it. So you can very quickly kick off a regen and then get back to the fight. So what I recommend that you do is you equip at least one miracle like medium heal, so if you have the space to do it, you can do a normal heal, but then if you don't have the time, you can just go to the weapon art and do some background regeneration. And because of the nature of it, if the Guardian happens to be nearby, I believe the regen will affect them as well. So it's a good way to keep them in the fight just a little bit longer. And finally, my number 1 tip, and that is have a lot of Vigor. Because of your inability to heal outside of miracles, you may find in certain fights you never get an opportunity to heal. And the fact that your defense and your poise buffs, it makes each point of HP you have that much more valuable. You only have a limited amount of it. Make sure that you take full advantage of it. Have really high vitality, or I'm sorry, not vitality, Vigor. That is the biggest tip that I can give you. Guys, I really hope that you found these tips helpful and you got some value out of them. I know a lot of these, if you've been following my videos, you've probably heard here and there, but I wanted you